Few disclaimers before I start here. First off, Sekiro, I don't know how to pronounce it, will not be included here. I've never played that game. Second, the Chalice dungeon bosses in Bloodborne are not here. I think it works out for me at least because I haven't completed all the Chalice dungeons yet, so I wouldn't be able to rate them anyway. Alright, let's get started. Alright, I'm gonna start this off by giving every tier a representation. I'm going to put what I think is an example of one boss of each tier on the list before I start. So to start off, an S tier boss. What do I think is an S tier boss? One of the best in the series, if not the best. Well, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is Slave Knight Gale. He can be the baseline for S tier. Alright, now what do I think is a boss that is great, very good, very high quality, but not necessarily arguably the best in the series? Uh, the first thing that comes to mind for this tier, probably something like the Twin Princes or Nameless King. Where are they? I'm gonna use the Twin Princes as my baseline for A tier. Alright, now what do I think is like an above average boss? One that I'd consider good but not great. Let's get representation from a different game here. A good but not great boss. Hmm. Oh, something came to mind, but I think it would be kind of controversial, so I'll save that for later. This my second choice would also, I think, be too controversial just for the start here. Let me look through this a bit more. You know what? I think Father Gascoigne is probably a good representation of B tier. One that I'd consider good, above average, but not necessarily great. Alright, C. What's an average, forgettable boss? Not necessarily forgettable, I'd say like in the decent range. Should we get Dark Souls 2 involved for this? What's a decent average boss that we can use for C tier? I think I'll go with Velstadt for a representation for C tier. Alright, now what's a below average boss? Not necessarily terrible, but definitely one that I have more negative feelings toward than positive feelings. It's a good representation for D tier. You know, what comes to mind now is something like Deacons of the Deep. I'd say more bad than good, but not like egregiously awful. That'll be the F tier. And speaking of which, what is arguably one of the worst bosses in the series? Um, Honestly, Bed of Chaos is coming to mind. I feel like that's too obvious of an ex- You know what, screw it. I'm just gonna use Bed of Chaos as my representation of F tier. Wait, let me find it here first. Holy shit, am I blind? There it is. Okay, there we go. Now we, I think, have a pretty solid foundation for all the tiers, so I'm just gonna go in order on the list now. Alright, the one reborn. Alright, I guess we're starting off with Bloodborne. Let me just say I'm probably the least familiar with the Bloodborne bosses. I've only played through the game twice as of the time this video is recorded. However, both of the times I played through the game, uh, I only took damage once from this boss, and it was from the fireballs on the side. I don't know what the boss itself can do, but both of the times I fought it, the second time was in New Game Plus, it did basically nothing. Maybe there's more to it if you don't just stun lock it into oblivion, but seeing as how I was able to do it with zero research on my first attempt, I think that's kind of indicative of a bad boss. So, not egregiously awful like Bed of Chaos, but definitely below average. Celestial Emissary. So basically this game's version of Deacons. I think it fits very nicely in D tier next to the Deacons. It's basically Bloodborne's version of the Deacons. Breedis. Okay, this is actually one I'm gonna have to think about a little bit. I think I have more positive feelings towards Breedis than negative. Definitely has a pretty epic feel to it. Although, I think B is a good placement for it. The I wasn't a fan of the tentacle spam attack that can basically one-shot you. I thought that was a bit obnoxious. That kind of felt like the wrong kind of difficulty for a boss. That felt more like cheap difficulty than actual difficulty. Like, even in regular New Game, when I had almost 50 vitality, like, its tentacle spam towards the end basically just one-shot me still, which I think is a little over the top. I think B tier is a good rating for it. Its kind of questionable attacks hold it back from A tier. Amygdala. I think that's about average. I think it was a bit underwhelming, especially since these creatures were hyped up throughout most of the game. I was expecting more when I actually got to fight one. It wasn't bad per se, but I'd say a little underwhelming. I think C tier is a good placement for Amygdala. Laser was cool at least. Other than that, I didn't really care for its moveset that much. Oh god, this fight. Yeah, I'm gonna put it next to Bed of Chaos in F tier. Like, it's just not fun in any way, just chasing him around nonstop. And in my first playthrough, I was looking around for like 20 minutes because I couldn't find the side room that led to the final area he runs to. And then I got one shot by his spell that came out of nowhere. And I had like 40 plus vitality at that time in regular New Game. After chasing around for like 20 minutes, I got one shot by his stupid spell. Call to something, I forget the name of it. But yeah, I think that's pretty dumb. The wet nurse, yeah, that was kind of a dumb and underwhelming fight, I thought. Like, just get behind it, and it basically can't hit you. Not like egregiously awful like the ones I have in F tier, but definitely below average, I think. Gehrman. It has a really good setting, really good arena, good music, but honestly, I think the fight itself is kind of underwhelming, especially for a final boss. I'm gonna put it in B. The gameplay itself for that fight is a bit underwhelming, I think. Not like bad per se. But when I think of the bosses that come to mind for A and S tier, I just don't think the gameplay from Gehrman competes with something like Twin Princes or Gale. I think B is a good spot for Gehrman. Moon Presence. Okay, other than its gimmick attack that takes you to 1 HP, this thing has very little else to offer. Below average fight, I think. I'm putting it in D. Especially since it's a final boss. A final boss that you have to go out of your way to fight. Ludwig. Okay, now this fight is fucking epic. First phase, I think, is a beast fight done well. And then second phase, I mean, the only enemy in the game to use the Moonlight Greatsword against you. Plus, the music is great. It has a wide variety of attacks, all with different delays. Learning this fight in New Game Plus was really fun, I thought. I think Ludwig is a strong S tier. Living Failures. Yeah, it has visually interesting attacks, but that's pretty much it. Its actual attacks and moves are pretty boring and underwhelming. Even like the huge magic attack that it takes forever charging up doesn't really do much, and you could avoid it fairly easily. Cleric Beast. Really good atmosphere, really good music. Its moveset's a bit lacking, but I mean, it's a first boss. And for a first boss, I think it's definitely the best boss of the first bosses in the series. Like, it's definitely simple enough, but not like so simple that it's a complete joke on repeat playthroughs. Grab attack still does a lot of damage. I think it's pretty solid, especially when you consider the fact that it's the first boss. I'm gonna put it in B tier. Maria. Okay, I know a lot of people really like this fight. I do too, but I don't think it's really S. I think A tier is a better place for it. It is really cool. It is epic, I think. I love the lingering fire trail that she leaves behind in the end, but the gameplay is great, I'd say, but I don't think it's comparable to what I have in mind for S tier. I think A tier is fair for Maria. Orphan of Kos. Okay, I think it deserves S tier. It's probably the most aggressive boss in the series. It's the right kind of difficulty, I think. It has well-designed moves, a wide variety of them, a lot with various timings. It's if this was a difficulty list, I know this would probably be top 3, but at no point does the fight feel like bullshit. It feels completely fair. I thought it was really satisfying to learn a lot of the attacks. Like, in terms of gameplay, I think this fight is top notch. And the atmosphere is really good too. I really like the transition to phase 2, where the music also picks up at the same time. It has very haunting, memorable, like that roar it makes when it summons the lightning and whatnot too. It has both top-notch gameplay and atmosphere, I think. I think Orphan of Kos deserves S tier. Lawrence. This one I actually only fought once, or beat once because I didn't know it was there in my blind first playthrough. So I fought it for the first time in New Game Plus, and holy shit, this thing hits like a truck. I was getting two-shot on a 50 vitality build. I'm curious what it would have been like in regular New Game. But yeah, I thought the second phase was a really good twist. You'd think if something gets cut in half that it would be less dangerous, but I liked the new moveset. I liked the lingering lava trails. I thought it was a fun fight to learn. I don't know if the gameplay wasn't on par with what I have in S tier, I don't think, but it was still a really good fight, I think. Oh, plus the music was great too. They had like a whole ass orchestra for it. Blood-starved beast. I don't really have any strong opinions on this one way or the other. It's kind of just a middle of the road average boss, I think, C tier. Actually, the poison aura it does at the end is a bit obnoxious, I think. That's kind of a bad kind of difficulty, I think. I think I'm gonna put Bloodstarved Beast in D tier because I think like its final phase where it just gets like the poison aura is a bit cheap. Vicar Amelia. Uh, about average, I think. Okay, actually, hold on. I don't think it makes sense to put Vicar Amelia in C and Cleric Beast in B. I gave Cleric Beast a bit more credit since it's the first boss, but I think Vicar Amelia is a better fight than Cleric. I'm gonna switch these two, actually. I think that makes more sense. Or maybe just both, and I don't think they can both be in the same tier. But at the same time, I don't think Vicar Amelia is on par with what I currently have in B tier. Ooh, this is actually tough for me to decide. Uh, I think both of them in C tier is probably best. If Cleric Beast wasn't such an early game boss, it might be D just because it has such a simplistic moveset. But I think I can give it a bit of extra credit since it's the first boss. Plus, it has a good atmosphere and music too. Well, they have the same music. You know what? I think this works out, both of them in C. Alright, moving on. Which is... a lot of people seem to really hate this fight. I didn't think it was that bad. On my first playthrough, I actually kind of enjoyed it a bit. The surprise of there being a second one, plus when the Mad One's being summoned and picked up, it added a bit of pressure, plus their stunning spell. I actually don't think it was that bad. Although once I knew the gimmick, it was kind of boring on the second playthrough. Okay, but then again, seeing what I have in C tier, I don't know if the gameplay compares. I think this fight is only ever notable the first time you ever do it. Yeah, I think D tier is probably a good rating for it. Shadows of Yarnum. Uh, pretty solid, but average, I'd say. Yeah, they're decent. I don't really have any strong feelings or thoughts beyond that. I'm just gonna put them in C. Rom. Oh god. Was not a fan of this at all. Is it bad enough for F tier though? Hmm. This is actually really tough for me. I don't know if I should put in F or D. It is a pretty annoying and tedious fight, I think. Well, then again, I only fought it 2 times. Maybe there's like a good strat to ignore the shit mobs that surround it. Then again, the shit mobs do like an absurd amount of damage. Like, I had close to 40 vigor by the time I got to this in regular new game, and the regular spiders were like two-shotting me still. You know what? It is actually a pretty annoying. I think it deserves F tier. It's borderline D tier, though, I think. Smarter Ligarius. Uh, I think it's above average. The spin to win memes in Phase 2 I thought were pretty cool. Has a good variety of attacks. He leaves like some thing on the ground that acts like an auto turret, which I thought was kind of cool. I don't think the gameplay compares to what I have in higher tiers. Yeah, B tier is good for Ligarius, I think. Dark Beast Pearl. Uh, Average, middle of the road boss, I think. I don't really have, uh, yeah, I can't really think of anything else to say about it. I don't really have strong feelings towards that thing. I think C is good for it. Alright, moving on to Demon Souls. Old Monk. Well, the NPC fight is just laughable garbage, to be honest, but I think the mere fact that it can be a PvP fight is a cool idea for the game. And I did actually have a little bit of fun being the boss. I think the online portion of it saves it from F tier, so I'll put it in D. Adjudicator. I fought this thing I think like 5 times, and I don't think it's even damaged me once. It has like comically slow attacks. I'm gonna put it in F tier because of that. Old hero. Uh, he has an okay gimmick of being blind. Even if the thief ring can kind of trivialize this fight, I think it's a cool idea at least. I'll put it in C tier. Storm King. I mean, this fight's basically just pure style over substance. I don't think it's like bad or unfun, but there's not really much to it. I'm gonna put it in D. Leechmonger. Okay, this thing's just annoying and spammy. Dirty Colossus. Uh, it's below average, but I don't think it's like a terrible fight. I think D is a good spot for that. Maiden Ashraya. In terms of gameplay, this fight is honestly kind of garbage. Like, the paladin dude just sits there and tanks, and he has, like, absurdly high defense. It often just devolves into, like, baiting an attack, attacking him, rinse and repeat, like, 20 plus times in a slow, tedious process. And maybe there's, like, a good way to run through the poison swamp, but every time I tried it, he caught up and like backstabbed me, and you can't even roll in it. Like, there was basically nothing but annoyance and tedium here all the times I've done it. But then again, I've only played it. I think I've only beaten the Demon Souls bosses like 5 times, and I haven't looked up like advanced strats. I'm sure there's probably a way to make it much better, but I'm gonna have to put it in F. I know it has good lore and atmosphere, but gameplay is the main thing I'm considering for this list, and the gameplay here is just bad. So, yeah. You know what? Maybe the atmosphere and like emotional impact can bring it up to a D. It is directly related to the fight, like the atmosphere and whatnot, which I think that can save it from F at least. Kingalant. Pretty solid humanoid type fights. I don't think it's really on par gameplay wise with these. But yeah, it's a pretty solid fight, I think. Not really much else I can think to say about it. Oh, and then like the slug version of him. I mean, obviously it's just a lore fight. In terms of gameplay, it's probably the most passive boss in the series. I think it's even slower than the Covetous Demon, so I don't think I can put it above F. Vanguard. Uh, I think D is a good spot for it. Witch of Hemrick, not F. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. You know, on the first playthrough, I think the surprise of there being two and the pressure of the things that they summon adds at least some kind of enjoyment to the fight, enough to save it from F tier. The 300 army rejects from Demon Souls. I think it's a neat gimmick, and it's a first boss, so I'll be a bit generous and give it C tier. Average, I think. Tower Knight. Hmm, probably one of the better Demon Souls bosses, but the knight itself is kinda simple. It's a cool arena and cool idea, though. I think, is B tier too much? Yeah, gameplay-wise, it's kinda lacking, I think, so I'm gonna put it in C. My first instinct was to put it in B, but when I see what else I have in B right now, I just don't think gameplay-wise it really compares, so yeah. C tier for Tower Knight. Penetrator. I think C is a good spot for Penetrator also. You know what, seeing Phalanx in the same tier as Tower Knight and Penetrator doesn't feel right, though, because I think those are definitely better fights, so I'm going to put Phalanx in D, even though I kind of like the fight. The gameplay is still kind of lacking. I don't think it belongs in the same tier as these. Armored Spider. It is kind of annoying, but at the same time it is fairly unique. I think middle of the road in C is a good spot for Armored Spider. Flame Lurker. Ooh, this is probably my favorite boss in Demon Souls. Oh, where do I put it? Honestly, I think it might belong in A tier. Like, it's basically the fastest an enemy could reasonably be in Demon Souls. It has probably the most complex moveset out of any enemy in Demon Souls. Like, you have to actually not just time the roll properly, but be very mindful of positioning because of the lingering AoEs as well. I think Flame Lurker actually belongs in A tier. Best boss in Demon Souls, in my opinion. Dragon got. Oh my god, I hate this fight so much. And the added disappointment of this thing being hyped up so much only to basically end up being a stealth fight. Just no. Awful gameplay. Big disappointment. I think that's an easy F tier for me. Fool's Idol. You know what, this was actually one of the better gimmick fights in the series, I think. I had fun with this fight on my first playthrough. It was kind of boring on my second playthrough, though. You know what, I think the fairly well thought out gimmick is good enough for C tier, even if the gameplay is kind of lacking. Oh, but what else do I have in C tier? Do I really want this in the same tier as something like Vicar Amelia and Cleric Beast? The gimmicks are really gonna carry hard because the gameplay is definitely lacking here. I actually don't know. You know what, I'll just leave it there for now. I'll go over it at the end and move anything that I think seems out of place. Let's move on. Man-eaters. Uh, My first instinct was to put them in B, but seeing as how kind of finicky their AI can get, I think that just holds it back from B tier. I think they're definitely one of the better boss fights in Demon Souls, but they can be really derpy in the arena and get lost in midair for quite some time. If the AI was better, I would put it in B tier, but I think their fairly common glitchy AI is enough to hold it back in C tier. I do like that fight though. Hey, we're moving on to Dark Souls 1. Alright, Gwendolyn. Oh god. Just looking at this, even though I love Dark Souls 1 to death, I'm probably gonna rate a lot of the bosses pretty low. Yeah, DS1 has some pretty questionable bosses, to say the least. I don't think it's like egregiously awful and annoying, but it is pretty bad. You literally just run down a hallway. I think D is a good spot for Gwendolyn. Priscilla. The invisibility gimmick is okay, I guess, but her offense is pretty awful. Like, if you break the You know what? It's actually a neat idea, I think. I think it being one of the more clever gimmicks is enough to get it to C tier, even if the gameplay is lacking. Plus, cute, fluffy waifu. Yeah, I agree. Dark Souls 1 is probably not going to do very well on this list. And this is coming from someone that loves Dark Souls 1 to death. Stray Demon. Here, let's just do Stray Demon and Fire Sage together since they're basically the same thing. I think D is good for both of them. They're literally a reskin of each other. They're not like egregiously terrible like the F tier bosses, but yeah, they're pretty bad. I dislike DS1. Uh-oh. Well, enjoy me shitting on the bosses then. Ceaseless Discharge. Just awful. It's either a tedious run to and from the start of the arena, and fighting it normally, like just baiting its attacks, is really boring and tedious. I think Ceaseless is a definite F. Centipede Demon. God, the demon bosses in this game are so bad. At least Centipede Demon is somewhat of a fight. I'll put it in D tier. Pinwheel. It can be somewhat moderately fun, I guess, if you go there really early in the game. I'm gonna put it in D tier. Yeah, the arena is awful where you're just kinda forced into the start. Although, you can actually run through the lava on the right side to a much bigger area with only taking a minimal amount of damage, even without the ring. I think if you do that, it makes it at least a somewhat okay fight. Enough to save it from F at least. I guess it has a somewhat okay gimmick of being able to cut off its limbs and then the limbs can attack you. It's not good by any means. I still don't like this fight, but I think it has enough going for it to keep it out of F at least. Nito. Oh god. Do I put Nito in C? You know what? No, the biggest difficulty from this is if you don't have, what's it called? Not a cult. I forget the name. The, like, holy weapon that stops the skeletons from respawning. The biggest difficulty from this is definitely from trash mob spam, which I think is bad. Nito gets D tier, even if I think he looks really cool. Yeah, you're right. C too high. Speaking of shitty Lord Soul bosses, Seath also gets D, I think. The only challenge you could get out of Seath is if you're trying to get the Moonlight Greatsword, in which case his backwards tail spam can actually be pretty hard to avoid. But even then, it's not enjoyable in any way, I don't think. And if you like literally on my first playthrough, I just stood in the middle of him and kept attacking, and I won like that. He is super passive, he doesn't do anything, but it's not like egregiously terrible or annoying like the F tier bosses, so I think D is a good spot. Asylum Demon. I mean, it's basically the same thing as Stray and Demon Fire. Well, not exactly the same. It's like an even dumbed down version of them. I think it works well as a tutorial boss, but that's about the only good thing I can say about it. Sif. Uh, in terms of atmosphere and lore, it's definitely one of the most memorable in the series, but gameplay is the primary thing I'm considering. And gameplay, I think it's about average. Although, the lore and atmosphere is built directly into the arena with Artorias' grave in the background and the sad music. While gameplay is the primary thing I'm taking into account, it's not the only thing. Does the sheer atmosphere of it carry it to B tier, do you think? Because in terms of atmosphere and lore, it's probably one of the best, even if the gameplay is mediocre. I don't know. You know what? I'm just gonna keep it in C for now. Let's see, what do I have in B? Yeah, no, all the bosses in B tier are good gameplay-wise, too. I don't think I should. Four Kings. I think C is good for the Four Kings. It is mostly just a DPS race, but I think they have enough variety in their moves to keep it semi-interesting. Moving on, Sanctuary Guardian. I actually quite like the Sanctuary Guardian. For Dark Souls 1 standards, it's pretty fast and aggressive. I think it has a decent moveset variety. I'm gonna put it in B tier. Yeah, I agree. In terms of just like pure aesthetics, Sif would probably be top tier, but I'm mostly considering gameplay for this list, so Sif is average in terms of gameplay, I think. And yeah, Sanctuary Guardian is pretty decent, I think. I think B is a good rating for it. Knight Artorias. Okay, this might be kind of a hot take. I know how much everyone fawns over Artorias. I think he's really good myself too, but I don't think he's S tier. There's one thing in the fight that holds it back from being S tier, in my opinion, and that's the fact that you can attack him for so long and knock him out of his buff. I think that allows the player to get like way too many free hits in. What I think they should have done was made it to where every buffing phase is a quicker AoE and you can't stun them out of it. You'd have like enough time to just dodge out of the way of it, like with the Four Kings AoE. If they just did something like that and didn't interrupt the fight for so long to allow the player to get a bunch of free hits in, I think it would be a good S tier. If they like forced you to deal with his two buffs without getting a bunch of free hits, but that holds it back enough from S, I think. Calamite. I like Calamite. I think it's above average, but I think his kind of questionable hitboxes that are clunky keep it in B tier. Manus. Okay. Once again, I expect people to disagree with this, but I think Manus is actually S tier. Like, okay, hear me out. He's about the fastest an enemy could reasonably be in Dark Souls 1, and his dark magic feels very powerful. It really makes you feel like you're fighting like this super powerful being. Plus the lore is really good, the atmosphere is really good. Wow, I'm surprised you actually agree with it. Yeah, I actually agree. I think Manus is the best DS1 boss. Although, seeing him next to Gale and Ludwig, I don't know if he fits in. But then again, it is DS1, which is a slower game. If Manus was like scaled up to the speed of DS3 or Bloodborne, like when you consider that, I think it's about on par with them. Like he is objectively slower, but then again, the game Dark Souls 1 is also. Like if you scaled like Ludwig and Gale down, it would probably be about Manus speed. I think Manus actually deserves S tier. Oh god, what's happening to the page? His attacks are quite... Really? You think so? I think he has like a wide variety of attacks. A lot of them have different speeds and whatnot. But whatever, to each their own. Gwen. I'm actually not quite sure. You know what? I think C is a good spot for him. If you know how to parry, the fight's really easy. If you don't know how to parry, I think it's borderline like unreasonably hard. I think because of that, C is a good spot for Gwen. Taurus Demon. It works well as the second boss in the game, I think, but it's pretty simplistic, so I don't think I can have it above D. Bell Gargoyle. I actually quite like this fight. I think I might actually put them in B tier, even though it'll probably be like the weakest in terms of gameplay. I think it's like a really good early game boss fight, though. Oh god, the DS2 one is hot garbage. Spoiler alert, that's definitely going in F. But I think it's a pretty solid fight in DS1 at least. Moonlight Butterf... Okay, fuck this fight. If you don't have some kind of ranged ability, then this is just such a slow, tedious, and boring fight. Yeah, that's an easy F in my opinion. Capra Demon. I think Capra is another easy F. This is like the epitome of artificial difficulty. None of the enemies alone are bad, but you're forced to fight them in a super small confined room, and they just immediately jump on you the second you run it. This is just peak artificial difficulty. Easy F in my opinion for Capra. Gaping Dragon. I think D tier is probably a good spot for it. It's kind of underwhelming, but it's just so slow. I don't think it's like terrible enough for F tier though. Quelaag. I think Quelaag is solid. I'll put Quelaag in C tier. Plus amazing chest ahead, etc. Iron Golem. This is probably one of the slowest enemies in the series. I think he looks kind of cool though. I don't think he's particularly bad. Plus, I think the ability to knock him off the edge is kind of cool. I think D is a good spot. Ornstein and Smo. No, dude, ONS is great. I'm gonna put them in A tier. I think it's a really well-designed fight. Oh, you're crazy. I cannot. There we go. The page was freezing a little bit. Like, no, I think phase one, their attacks are like a good, they complement each other well. It doesn't feel like too overwhelming, but at the same time, I think it's like the right level of pressure. Plus, the transition into phase two is pretty epic. I think if just Super Smo on his own was better, it would be S tier. But I think Super Smo being slightly underwhelming is what holds it back from S tier, in my opinion. Super Ornstein is really good, though, I think. But Phase 1 feels like a good... It feels like the right amount of pressure in a gank fight, unlike some of the Dark Souls 2 bosses that we'll get to later. Really? Only C? Well, to each their own. Oh, speaking of Dark Souls 2, hey, here we go. Thronies, Owen. Oh, absolutely not. I like the Thronies, but I think ONS works a lot better. Alright. I don't think DS2 is going to do very well on this list either, but let's get started. Skeleton Lords. I've never seen so many enemies do so little in a fight. D tier. Covetous Demon. I'm not gonna put it in F just because it's so easy. It's not ever really annoying at any point. D tier, yeah, dude, like the skeletons do next to nothing. I've not once felt even the slightest amount of pressure, even on my blind playthrough. They just like sit there and do nothing, and it's so easy to like kite them around like the piles of bodies and pick them off. I found it kind of tedious and underwhelming. Mythia, uh, C. Yeah, luckily I had advice Andes in my chat that told me to do that, or else I would have had to deal with the poison. Smelter Demon, Smelter Demon's alright. I'll give Smelter Demon a C. I think its, uh, health drain is kinda cheap, but it doesn't do a huge amount of damage to the point where I think it's like super intrusive. So I'll keep it at C. Yeah, not a huge fan of the health drain AoE, but it's decent, I think. Old Demon King. Okay, let's be real. The real boss. Oh, hold on. Page is freezing again. Damn it, why does my laptop suck? I'm not selecting everything, as you can see on the screen, my cursor's just stuck. Oh, god damn it. Come on, don't freeze. You can do it. Anyway, as I was saying, the real boss fight for the old Demon King is the hole in the middle of the arena. The actual Demon King itself is kind of a joke. I think D tier is good. The Scorpion, honestly I found this fight to be a little annoying with the underground memes and whatnot. I'm gonna put it in D tier. Royal Rat Authority. Oh God, this is actually one of my least favorite fights in the series. Fuck that. Wait, hold on. Is this the one with like the Mohawk rat or like the giant dog mutant rat hybrid thing? Well, let me make sure it's the right one first. Where's the other rat? Okay, yeah, the Vanguard is the one with the shit ton of rats. This is the one with the giant rat and the four toxic rats at the start. Yeah, that fight is just absolute hot garbage. Mangus and congregations. It's literally just a room of trash mobs that they gave a boss health bar for whatever reason. F tier. The DS2 spider, I think it's actually okay. I like the torch gimmick. It's one of the few times where it actually makes you feel like you're using, or like the torch is useful. Yeah, that's a C, I think. Royal Rat, Vanguard. I mean, just the mere fact that it's super easy, it doesn't get annoying, I don't think, so I think that saves it from F tier. Last Giants, just nah. Easy, forgettable, but not terrible. Same with the Rotten, I think. Twin Dragon Riders. Okay, I'm putting them in F because not only are they super boring and forgettable, but it's also a repeat of a boss that was already in the game. So, yeah. Looking Glass Knight. Probably one of the better DS2 base game bosses. Uh, I think it has some cool gimmicks, but in terms of gameplay, it's just kind of meh. So I think C's a good spot for Looking Glass Knight. Seaman of Dong. I never really liked this fight, but it's not bad enough for F tier, I don't think. He either just sits there and does nothing, or he'll do like some long combo that'll basically one-shot you with very little in between. Guardian Dragon. Okay, I actually really don't like this fight. This thing just flies away nonstop. It's pretty slow and tedious, plus it's literally just like a mini boss in two other areas. Yeah, that's a dog shit boss. Fuck that fight. Ancient Dragon. Another awful DS2 dragon fight. Here's the process for it. Clip its toenails, run back in advance to avoid the fire down breath AoE that covers like half the arena. Rinse and repeat that process like 20 times. Very slow, boring, and tedious, and if you're caught sleeping, you just get one shot, basically. Giant Lord. Probably the most farmed enemy in the game. Just boring, underwhelming, forgettable. Where did it go? I placed it there. It just like disappeared. Oh, great. The page froze again. I don't know where the Giant Lord went. It's not back here. Did it get put in F somewhere? Giant Lord actually just disappeared. Oh, there it is. Okay, there we go. Wait, no, that's the last giant, not giant. Fuck, where did Giant Lord go? Oh, it somehow ended up here. Thanks, computer. Okay, moving on. Vendrick. Uh, I mean, he has a lot of health, but he has like two moves, and they're both really underwhelming. Vendrick is F. I don't know if it's that bad. It's something that just kind of bores me. It doesn't. annoy or infuriate me like all of the bosses in F tier do. The Giant Souls was a decent gimmick, I think, at least. Actually, no, he literally just has like two moves. It's a very slow rinse and repeat fight. That's kind of tedious now that I think about it, so I'm gonna put it in F tier. Not even. Throne Duo. Okay, I think they're probably one of the better base game bosses. They don't really have that many moves though, which I think holds it back a bit though. But definitely one of the better bosses in the game. Yeah, B tier, I agree. The Pursuer. You know, if you didn't have to fight him like 10 times, I'd probably like him a lot more. But I got really sick of him pretty quickly, so I'm gonna put him in D tier, even though I don't think he's a bad enemy per se. Why does this page keep freezing? I'm sorry, my computer sucks and it like keeps freezing. Maybe if I like minimized everything and opened it again, or refreshed or something. Hey, prepaying. I think I've given pretty fair rankings to the DS2 bosses so far. Nishandra. Ugh. I don't really have much to say about a lot of the DS2 bosses. Like, a lot of them are just meh, in my opinion. Nikolai is F. Yeah, of course, that fight was awful. Felt like I was chasing a ganking host in Dark Souls 3 PvP, trying to run back to resummon. Nishandra is just meh and forgettable in my opinion. She has like two moves and like an environmental hazard. That's it. Dark Lurker. Okay, I actually think Dark Lurker is probably the best DS2 boss. Once again, I think this is a gank fight done well. It adds like the right amount of pressure, I think, to the player. Yeah, the run back is awful, you're right, but I'm not counting that on this list. I think Dark Lurker is actually the best DS2 boss though. Yeah, I think when there's two of them, it's just the right amount of pressure for a gank fight. The moves complement each other really well, I think, too. I'm putting Dark Lurker in A. Why does this page keep freezing? Also high resling. I'm sorry, my computer sucks and it keeps freezing. Hold on, let me try maximizing it.